Okay, we have to get into now the potential unconstitutionality, lack of constitutionality of Donald Trump's installation of a replacement to Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who he forced to resign last week, specifically of Matt Whitaker, Jeff Sessions' chief of staff. There is this thing we have in the United States called the Constitution. Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2 says that principal officers of the United States must be nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate under its advice and consent powers. Matthew Whitaker, who has been installed by Trump to replace Jeff Sessions, was not confirmed by the Senate. And there is growing legal opinion from progressive, liberal, leftist legal scholars and from conservative legal scholars that this appointment is simply not constitutional. There is Supreme Court precedent here. There's actually a case from last year on which even Trump's favorite justice, Clarence Thomas, agreed that the general counsel of the National Labor Relations Board had been invalid on statutory grounds, but Clarence Thomas wrote in his opinion that even if the statute had allowed the appointment of this general counsel to the NLRB, the Constitution's appointments clause would not have allowed it. That was for the general counsel to the National Labor Relations Board. We're talking about the Attorney General right now. And there's a legal opinion that was published in the New York Times by two co-authors. One is George Conway III, who is Trump advisor Kellyanne Conway's husband. This is a right-winger, okay, who says the installation of Matthew Whitaker is not constitutional. Now, what are the counter arguments from the right for those who say it's fine to put in Matthew Whitaker? Well, one of the arguments that they're making is that if Sessions had been fired, it would be true that it would not be allowed to install Matthew Whitaker on this basis. But that because Jeff Sessions resigned, of course, he was forced to resign. We typically call that a firing. He is therefore, Matthew Whitaker is therefore not an appointment, but it's someone being put in as acting attorney general until someone is actually appointed and confirmed. But the argument here is a constitutional one, that consent, that advice and consent are required and that it applies to this situation, period, that it doesn't matter whether Jeff Sessions resigned or was fired. But they will say, what about Sally Yates? Sally Yates was acting attorney general for so long, David. Don't you remember that? Well, I don't remember it because she was acting attorney general for 10 days. This is a lie that is being spread everywhere. Sally Yates was only acting attorney general from January, I forget the dates. It was late January of 2017. It was about a 10-day period. But there's a really important difference here, Pat, between Sally Yates and Matt Whitaker. Sally Yates had been confirmed by the Senate as deputy attorney general. Matt Whitaker was Jeff Sessions' chief of staff. He was a staffer. He was never confirmed at any level by the Senate. And every single legal opinion that I am reading, Pat, from the left and right, that actually understands this nuance is saying Whitaker can't be there, and this is a constitutional problem.
Yeah, and just like that, by every standard, the replacement, at least as acting attorney general right now, should be the deputy, which is Rod Rosenstein. But from Trump's perspective, Rosenstein is even worse than Jeff Sessions. Rosenstein is the guy who started the Mueller probe. So there's no sense in him firing Jeff Sessions or at least forcing him out just to have some guy who's worse bring up the rear. And they're probably able to get away with this because it's going to be a limited time period when Whitaker is actually serving. And it's going to get us to a point where we're all just desensitized to the whole thing. And if Whitaker does indeed end the Mueller probe, there probably won't be that much backlash.
I hope you're wrong, but I worry, Pat, that you are right. And even John Yoo, one of the most repulsive right-wing legal scholars, he's the guy who refused to clearly answer whether or not the president could order a terror suspect buried alive. Remember that exchange with John Conyers years ago? Even John Yoo says that the Whitaker appointment goes too far. In an email to Axios, John Yoo wrote that, quote, "The Constitution says that principal officers must go through appointment with the advice and consent of the Senate. In Morrison v. Olson, the Supreme Court made clear that the Attorney General is a principal officer. Therefore, Whitaker cannot serve as acting Attorney General despite the Vacancies Act, which does provide for him to be acting AG. The statute is unconstitutional when applied in this way. This is no bleeding heart liberal legal scholar. And the next step, which we're going to talk about after the break, is that Trump now is starting to distance himself from Matthew Whitaker as the White House has been taken aback by the reaction to the Whitaker appointment. It genuinely seems that the White House had no idea that this was going to explode into a situation where legal scholars on the left and right are of the mindset that this is not okay. And Trump now is pretending he doesn't even know the guy, despite having met with him multiple times. We're going to talk about that after the break. I want to hear your thoughts about this. I'm on Twitter at @dpakman. The show is on Twitter at David Pakman Show. Things are going to get crazy for the next week, that's for sure. I am thrilled to tell you that one of today's sponsors is simplehabit.com/Pakman, where you can go and get a 7-day totally free trial of an app that I use personally and love. I've talked to you before about the benefits of meditation, just simply sitting there, observing what it is that your mind wants to do has been a great thing for me. We have so much evidence growing all the time that this is just a good thing for people to do. And one of the best tools you'll be able to find anywhere online for guiding you through meditation is Simple Habit. It just won the 2018 Google Play Award for Best Well-Being App, a very well-deserved award. They have guided meditations by some of the most respected mindfulness experts from the East and West. You can choose from a huge selection of 5-minute meditations, each designed specifically for where you are or what you're doing or the mood that you're in. They have meditations for falling asleep, for when you're waking up, for your daily commute, when you've just gotten home from work. There are meditations specially crafted to help people deal with anxiety or to get focused before doing something difficult. And Simple Habit lets you keep track of your progress by giving you feedback about how much you're meditating, how many days in a row you've been meditating. It's a really comprehensive and well put together app. Go check it out. You can try it free for 7 days at simplehabit.com/Pakman. I've put a link underneath this video.